virtually every term of political discourse has two meanings. One is its literal meaning, and the second, which is often quite different, is its usage in political discourse or political warfare. So, for example, take communism. It has a literal meaning. Literal meaning is, the core principle is workers' control over production, community control over decision-making, and so on. That's the literal meaning. The way it's used is for a system that's almost radically the opposite. Absolutist, control from the top, virtually no participation, and so on. Or say, take democracy. Democracy is supposed to be a system of government of, by, and for the people. That's what we hail. We look at the actual meaning, say, U.S., which is a pillar of democracy. We find that about 70% of the population, the lower 70% on the income scale, have no influence whatsoever on political decisions. No attention is paid to them. Attention increases slightly as you move up. When you get to the very top, people get what they want because they essentially make policy. Or take free trade agreements. Like right now, the United States and the Pacific countries are negotiating a Trans-Pacific partnership. It's hailed as a wonderful free trade agreement. It's being done in secret. There's a reason for that. Not total secret. It's not secret from the hundreds of corporate lobbyists and lawyers who are writing it. They know all about it. Little bits and pieces have leaked out thanks to WikiLeaks. And they reveal what any rational person would expect when corporate lobbyists and lawyers are writing an agreement. Very much like Nafta, North American Free Trade Agreement, and others. It's not a free trade agreement. In the phrase North American Free Trade Agreement, the only accurate words are North American. It's not free. It has very heavy protectionist elements designed to maximize profits for pharmaceutical corporations and other oligopolies supported by the state, onerous patent regulations which ensure that drug prices will cost way more than they ought to for drug company profits. A lot of it isn't about trade at all. It's about investor rights. Even the part that is about trade is trade in a very strange sense. So NAFTA, for example, is supposed to deal with trade between the United States and Mexico. Take a look at the trade between the United States and Mexico. There's much excitement about how much it's increased. Corporations are secret organizations. We don't have details of what they do, but the general estimates are that roughly 40 to 50% of cross-border transactions are internal to a command economy. So, for example, if General Motors makes parts in Indiana, sends them to northern Mexico, Maquiladora, to be assembled by cheap labor, and then the resulting automobile is sold in Los Angeles, that's called trade in both directions. It's about as much trade as in the old Soviet Union. If parts were made in Leningrad and sent to Warsaw for assembly and sold in Moscow, we wouldn't have called that trade. It's internal to a command economy. Happens to cross borders, but and that's a large part of so-called trade. Much of the content of these agreements are things like, for example, laws granting corporations the right to sue governments on the grounds that their future profits might be harmed, say by making a national park somewhere. And then this is adjudicated by a corporate-run group of decision makers, all totally out of the public view. So it's not free trade, it's not trade, and it's certainly not an agreement. at least if people are part of their countries. First of all, they barely know about it, and to the extent they know about it, they mostly oppose it. But these are, and that's the same with the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the European-U.S. trade agreement. These are, and it goes on term after term. You pick your choice. Almost it takes a security. Governments, a primary principle of international relations theory is that governments act to protect their security. Security for whom? Security for the population? No, they act in many ways to harm the population. Easy to show that, their own populations as well. Security for the state itself? Yeah, that's the reason for the secrecy. A lot of the secrecy is to protect state authority from scrutiny by their own public. Security for concentrations of domestic power, like, say, the corporate sector, definitely. That's what the Trans-Pacific Partnership is about. So yes, security in a certain sense, and not security in the sense that we're supposed to believe it. And as I say, you can run through term after term, and you find pretty much the same thing. So has this process increased through the 20th century? Yes, quite definitely, and for good reasons. Over the years, popular struggle has won many victories. The franchises increased. People have greater freedom. States have less power to coerce their populations violently. I mean, it's not a straight line, but in general, that's the tendency. And as it becomes harder to control people by force, it becomes necessary to control them in other ways, namely by propaganda, by deceit, by manipulation. And this is quite conscious. If you go back about a century, in the freest countries in the world, England and the United States, it was recognized openly that the problems of controlling the population are increasing. And therefore, new mechanisms must be developed, in fact, new industries devoted to controlling the public mind, to controlling attitudes and beliefs. That's the origin of the huge public relations industry, which is a massive industry, hundreds of billions of dollars a year, devoted to what we used to call propaganda, controlling attitudes and beliefs. And it's very striking to see the way it works. So, for example, we're supposed to believe in markets. Everybody's supposed to hail markets. Turn on the television set and take a look at the advertisements. The advertisements are designed to undermine markets. Markets are based, take an economics course, markets are based on informed consumers making rational choices. Take a look at the ad for an automobile or toothpaste or whatever. Is it trying to create an informed consumer making a rational choice? No. It's a huge effort, a tremendous waste for the economy, but enormous expenditures to create uninformed consumers who will make irrational choices, because it's critically necessary to undermine literal market behavior. That's a kind of a consequence of the growth of oligopoly, a very strong tendency in the economy towards oligopoly. Few major corporations controlling a market. They don't want to have price wars. They want basically fixed prices. So they have to turn to some sort of product differentiation that is basically meaningless. And that requires massive delusion, so-called what's called advertising, delusion of the public, to try to get them to pick this identical product rather than that identical product. That's almost point by point, almost. And this grows as freedom grows. The more freedom is won, the greater the effort to control attitudes and beliefs by mechanisms of this kind. That's why you have the huge growth of these industries of propaganda precisely in the free societies. Other countries tried to imitate them. Soviet Union, Lenin's Russia tried to imitate it, but it was so clumsy that nobody believed the word they were seeing. On the other hand, the Nazis tried to imitate it, and they did very well. Unfortunately, Goebbels was very struck by American commercial advertising and the techniques it was using, and adapted them to with good German efficiency, and regrettably that worked quite well. But that's exactly what you'd expect as more freedom and opportunity is won, and that's what we discover. Are there ways to overcome this problem? Well, one way is to dismantle the coercive institutions that are at the core of the system. If you have very high concentration of power at the top, they're going to be obviously working on ways to sustain and enhance their power. And the best solution is to devolve power down to people, to move towards authentic democracy. But short of that, people have to develop, as long as the institutions remain, the coercive institutions, people have to develop mechanisms of self-defense. It's very difficult to do on your own, though you can, but it's not. It gets easier when people are organized and interact and have associations, whatever they may be, in which they can discuss things with each other and develop their ideas and so on. That's, of course, one of the reasons why power systems are so eager to undermine and destroy what are called secondary associations, groupings of popular organizations of people who interact with one another. The ideal from the point of view of a coercive institution, a totalitarian state or a corporation, is to have people atomized, each person alone, you and your television set, or that's it. You shouldn't have any more structure than that. But by overcoming those constraints, it's possible to defend oneself. And of course, these institutions are not graven in stone. They're not God-given. They can be dissolved.